We're going to cover 4 specific currencies that are fixed value points, and we're going to talk about how those compare to cashback cards and airline specific points.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Podcast. I'm Eric. AJ is here with me. We are back in Salvador, Bahia, Brazil, and today we are going to talk with you guys about fixed value points and cashback cards. We haven't talked very much about that on the show so far. We've spent a lot of time focusing on those transferable currencies and also the airline specific miles. Those tend to be great value if you're looking for long haul international flights or business and first class. But there is some big opportunity there with the fixed value, and especially if you're starting to run out of credit cards to apply for or just looking to diversify your portfolio. Flexible points that get you cash back and statement credits, those fixed value points can be a huge win and combine really nicely with some of the other programs. So we're going to jump into that today. Today's show notes can be found at abroaders.com/flexible points.
So how about yesterday, man? Pretty cool. We got to meet up with some really cool people, and in particular, Rick of World Packers. So I actually don't know if we've mentioned it before. We had some audio issues. He was going to be on our podcast. But
yeah, we did it. We recorded like a 30-minute interview, and it was a great interview. I promise, guys, we will re-record and do that again. But yeah, it just didn't work out. We tried to do it over Skype, and the connection was terrible. You couldn't hear anything.
So you guys are probably wondering, what is World Packers? So it's actually worldpackers.com, and it's a platform where travelers can use their skills to get free accommodation. So World Packers plays the role of the middleman between hostels, mainly hostels. I don't know if they do boutique hotels, bed and breakfasts,
I think just hostels.
Travelers who have a skill, say it's photography or social media, or they're willing to just do grunt work and do laundry. But
I think the variety of things that the hostels are looking for, I mean, you can imagine what hostels could benefit
so many
from
things.
In terms of
gardening,
marketing,
music,
advertising,
teaching sports, tour guides, video marketing, administration. These are all things off their website. They've got like 25 different things that you could conceivably do. So really cool. And how it works is you get free accommodation for people looking to travel on the cheap. It's a pretty good match. And actually our friend Sylvia, who is from Sao Paulo, had been traveling around via World Packers and had an amazing experience.
Yeah, she was in Bahia. We never got to see her while she was up here, but she was in a place called Itacaré, which is a beach really close to Salvador, maybe 4 or 5 hours, but just one of the more famous beaches in Bahia, and it's a really beautiful place. And she stayed there for a couple of months for free and was able to do that just by working a couple hours a day. And that connection was set up through World Packers.
Yeah, and it depends on where you are, how much you work. I think in Europe it's maybe 3 hours a day, 4 days a week, and you get free accommodation.
Yeah, and the website covers that. They don't explicitly set you up with a way to make money while you're traveling as well, but that was one of the things Sylvia said to us over dinner was that she was able to get connected with the hostel to start with World Packers and get that free accommodation. So she secured that part for her trip. But once she got there, she was able to talk with the hostel owner and they were looking for more help. And so she was able to not only get free accommodation already worked out, but then also on top of that, be able to make a deal with the hostel owner to work more hours and be able to make enough money to spend, have some spending money and go out.
Yeah, one thing I really like, Eric and I got to meet the team of founders, and they're all really, really, really solid guys, really sharp guys, really hardworking guys, and really cool guys. CTO, super bright guy. He's building out the platform, which is going to allow the functionality for the hostels and the travelers to match up. And then Rick, the CEO, he's a pretty interesting guy.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting actually talking with their technical team about how they started out doing matches manually. And it's really similar to how we're doing matches with credit cards right now for our customers. So like if you say you want to go on a trip to Europe, we're manually picking out those cards and just seeing the evolution of like they were doing that with skill sets. They were saying like, oh, this hostel wants this guy can speak that language or knows photography. And they were doing those manual matches. And just to hear the CTO explain like how they built this platform on Ruby on Rails to be able to go in there and just break it out and have the system automatically do that.
Sure.
That's super cool to me from an entrepreneur standpoint.
Yeah, they had
scale that operation.
A really cool office too. It was everything you would expect from like a tech startup of these creative people. It was like kind of an old, big apartment with ping pong tables, fridge, happy hour on Fridays, and just like a really, really cool place, cool people. So that was a really neat experience. Not often do you get to go to an actual office of a cool startup that you may use.
Yeah, really inspiring, man. I mean, I definitely think that we're going to continue to have a distributed team and have people all over the place. But I also really look forward to growing the Abroaders team and the family of people that we work with. And that was inspirational to me to just sort of see all those people that were so passionate, so excited about what they were working on. Yeah, so they're a little bit further ahead of us just in terms of building their team and getting their product developed. They just got a big investment, so they're off and running and super cool. I definitely encourage you guys to check this out. Awesome way to bootstrap and be able to see the world for way cheaper.
Yeah, and one more thing after that, what was really cool is this Rick guy connected us with this angel investor and Eric and I got the opportunity to go to a founders lunch. There's an angel investor that invested in around 10 companies, and the founders of those companies were all at this lunch kind of sharing ideas, and there's a few talks on SEO, on valuations, on getting funding. And it was pretty cool because one of the other companies this angel investor invested in,
Kabina Mala, it means it fits in the bag. Really cool idea. I mean, something we were kind of informally doing on our own, like early on when we were coming down to Brazil. I know I a couple of times brought down iPhones or iPads to sell on Craigslist and stuff because the difference in price is huge.
Yeah.
And this is basically a website that facilitates all of that connection and makes it possible for somebody in Brazil that really wants to buy generally electronics, but also clothes and makeup, cosmetics, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that there's just a huge arbitrage opportunity. And this business is built around connecting people who want to buy stuff but are still in Brazil and people that are traveling and have plenty of space in their bag. And it is legally allowed to bring a certain amount of stuff with for personal use kind of thing. And so what they do is they're just like, okay, if you get allotted 2 bags and you get this many things that you can bring in, then we're going to fill that up if you're not already bringing things back for yourself.
Yeah, because some of those luxury items or nicer items in Brazil are so expensive. People literally fly to Miami to go shopping and just bring 2 bags full of stuff home.
Yeah, it's a little ridiculous that we make the visas so hard. I mean, can we just let them buy our stuff? I mean,
and speaking of teams and startups and building a team, Eric and I actually have an opportunity to announce right now we are going to be bringing on at least 1, if not more, apprentices. And so if you want to know about this, you can go to abroaders.com/apprenticeship. And if you don't know how to spell it, that's okay. Show us a little bit of initiative. Google it, figure out how to spell it, and get there. And we would love to hear from you if you are interested in working with us.
Yeah, so we're bringing someone on to help us manage the full process of content creation, doing research, keeping on top of all the credit cards and offers, keeping on top of the different accounts that we've got set up for our customers, and helping to earn and redeem miles. So there's a huge amount of opportunity for learning, both about traveling on points and also in terms of just learning skills that are going to make it possible for you to succeed in entrepreneurship and building a business. So we're really looking forward to starting to interview candidates. Again, check out abroaders.com/apprenticeship.
This will be a paid opportunity as well.
Yep. Definitely a paid opportunity. And looking forward to hearing from you guys, bringing at least one of you onto the Abroaders team. All right, so let's jump into the content for today's episode. We're going to cover 4 specific currencies that are fixed value points, and we're going to talk about how those compare to cashback cards and airline-specific points, so your points like American Airlines. And generally speaking, the fixed value points are good for covering lots of smaller travel costs. So those things add up quickly. You know, they may be like $5 or $10 here and there, but on a longer trip, it adds up really fast.
Sure.
It's really useful for that, and it's also useful for cheap flights. Generally, they're bad for premium cabin travel. So if you're looking for business and first class, you don't want to rely on your fixed value points. That being said, they are really good to cover the taxes and fees.
Sure.
So, you could get in a situation where you use United miles to fly business class and do a stopover in Europe on the way to Asia, and you're still going to pay $150 in fee, and you can wipe out those fuel charges and taxes just by using one of the fixed value cards to pay for the award ticket. So we're going to jump into that. A couple of basic points on why bother with these types of fixed value currencies. One, they're easier to use because there's no blackout dates. So you don't have the same situation with the award availability. Any seat that's available for sale is a seat that you can use your points for. And that's really convenient. It saves a lot of time.
Number 2 is it's based on the price of a ticket. So as far as redeeming, it's a bit more simple. You don't have to know about zone charts and any of the complexities that come with using American Miles or United Miles. It's straightforward. You find a cheap ticket and you use the points to buy that ticket because it's fixed value.
Yeah, and that comes back to the point that I made earlier about how it's good for those relatively cheap flights, because if the ticket's really expensive, what AJ means when he says it's based on the price of the ticket is if it's an extra $400, it's going to cost more points than a ticket that was cheaper. And so you can kind of pick and choose and use the airline-specific miles for the really expensive ones, and then use the points-based tickets, the flexible points, for the cheap ones. The third point is that you can use the fixed value points to get a rebate on taxes and fees that come with award bookings. I did just mention that a second ago, but it bears repeating and going into a little bit more detail because I wanted to make sure you guys pay attention to one specific exception here. And that is you don't want to use a fixed point card to pay the taxes and fees if there are really useful benefits that come with using a different card. So an example would be if you're redeeming American Airlines miles, the Citi Platinum Select card gets you a 10% rebate on points redeemed. So if I redeem 50,000 points, I automatically get 5,000 points back in my account just for using the Citi card. And that can be sometimes much more valuable. It can be a better choice than using your Capital One card or something to get the points back.
You do a little bit of math there, though.
Yeah, I mean, you want to pick and choose. The other one is checked bag fees. And so that can come up big, especially if you're traveling on an itinerary with a few different people. Most of the cards that offer free checked bags are going to offer it for like up to 8 people on your itinerary. So if you're traveling with your family, that can be a huge cost. And you just want to look at those other options.
Yeah, and the fourth point is, just like everything in the points game, it's just an additional tool that you can use. You can deploy some different schemes. You've got the cash back, the fixed value points.
Cool. All right. Well, let's put this into a little bit more concrete example, just so you can see how we were thinking about this when we booked our recent trip. So as you guys know, we traveled from Salvador to Rio de Janeiro, then to Sao Paulo, and then back to Salvador. And we ended up booking 2 award tickets out of that group using 15,000 Avios and saving just under $300 each. And so those were the legs from Salvador to Rio and then from Sao Paulo back to Salvador. And we ended up buying the ticket from Rio to Sao Paulo with cash, which was only around $63. So let me break down how we decided to do it this way. First of all, the choice to pay cash for the Rio to Sao Paulo flight was super easy because if we had used Avios, it would have cost $4,500 and we would have only saved $45 after taxes. That's 1 cent per point, not a good deal on the redemption. The Avios we used on the flight to Rio and then the flight back from Sao Paulo were a little bit more in the gray area. The flight to Rio was the most expensive one. That was the best value that we got, and we ended up with 2.12 cents per point. And then the flight to Salvador home from Sao Paulo was 1.8. I think the way that you want to think about this, I generally try and shoot for around 2. I think our average for ourselves and customers is 3.5 or 4. So it's really important to try and have a little bit of discipline there. But the other side of the equation is you don't want to hoard points because rules change, programs devalue, and ultimately the whole point of acquiring points is to save cash. You and I didn't have a whole bunch of cash handy.
Sure.
And so we saved $300 each. That's a good deal. That's the other side. If you can get reasonable savings, don't be afraid. Dip into the 1.8, 1.7 cents a point. If you're feeling happy and you got a good deal,
yeah, just get the value you want. If you're a little bit cash poor at the moment and your miles rich, go ahead and have a redemption that's not at the 2 mark because it's going to help you.
And the other thing that's interesting, I mean, this was our first time flying into Congonhas, which is one of the smaller airports, and it's downtown Sao Paulo. And it's a huge difference. I mean, it takes like an hour and a half to get in from the big international airport to get downtown. And sometimes that's an area where points make sense. Like maybe the cheapest ticket you could get is really cheap, but it's to some airport in the middle of nowhere. So that doesn't work. It's not that convenient.
And then you got to spend a bunch of money on a taxi or just do 2 hours in the biggest city in the Southern Hemisphere's traffic.
Cool. All right, so let's talk about the opportunity cost a little bit here because it is important to know what you could do with those points if you didn't spend them on that short flight. So AJ and I, as I said, used 15,000 Avios per person. And 15,000 is enough for a one-way from the U.S. to Europe in economy if you fly that Boston to Dublin route on Aer Lingus. That's an option. You could use those points and add 2.5 thousand left over, and that's maybe an 8-hour flight and probably closer to like $600 or $700.
Yeah.
So when you compare that to saving $300, maybe not quite as good a deal, but I'm not going to Europe from Boston.
Yeah, we've got other miles that can get us to Europe if we want to go to Europe.
The other thing to think about as well is In this case, I think we had 30,000 Avios points in the bank already sitting there, and I think we got some of those from a transfer bonus that American Express ran. But if you're transferring currencies, you should think even harder about it, because if you're using your Amex, Chase, or Starwood points, you've got infinitely more options with those 15,000 points than you do if they're already in the Avios program. So just take a look and just kind of think things over and see if you're really getting enough value for the points to justify not spending the cash.
One more downside of redeeming points is that you don't get the chance to earn redeemable miles for flying or elite status when you book award tickets. So if that's something that matters to you, that's something you need to keep tabs on, and it's probably best to buy those tickets cash. For example, Eric and I, we credited a flight on Goal to Delta. So in addition to not spending any points, we got an extra 500 Delta miles, and we got something to show for it.
It's 500 Delta points isn't going to get you anything right away, but if you do that over and over, it's nice to at least you're not.
And as far as the math worked, for $63.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, cheap flight. We got a good flight. We got where we wanted to go, and we got to top up our balance with Delta. Let's talk a little bit about how fixed value points work. And one of the things that they do allow is you to earn those miles and elite status. Now, like we said, AJ and I bought this ticket for cash, just like regular paid with a credit card. But fixed value points function similarly. And so the way that it works is you use the credit card that earns those points. And we're going to, as we cover each currency, we're going to mention at least one card that earns the points. That would be a way to get started with the fixed value currency. But you use that card to pay for your flight or maybe your Uber ride, your hotel, whatever that travel expense is going to be. And then you wait until the charge appears on your bank statement. Afterwards, you log in online or call the bank and redeem your points, and they'll give you a statement credit. So they just basically, like that $63 flight, if we had used Barclays card for it, we would just wait till it posts on our statement, and then we would go onto the Barclays online portal and redeem and get $63 back each on the credit card statement. Let's start with Barclays, because that's actually my top pick for fixed value points. And there's a couple of reasons. They're truly the most flexible. And so the card that we've got right now for Barclays, there's the Arrival card, which is 20,000 miles after 1,000 spend in the first 90 days. And then there's also the Barclays Arrival Plus card, which is a more premium version of the card. And that one's 40,000 miles after spending 3,000 in 90 days. The nice thing about the lower bonus one, the Arrival card, is that there is no annual fee for that one. But I believe that on the Arrival Plus, the better offer, the fee is waived for the first year. So that's a scenario where you might start with the Arrival Plus, and then if the annual fee comes around, you might downgrade to the lower version of the card. The reason that Barclays is so attractive to me is that you can make partial redemptions. And in just a second, when AJ covers some of the other programs, you're going to understand why this is important. But with Barclays, you don't have to have enough points to cover the full cost. So basically, the conversion is $100 costs 10,000 points. So if you get 10,000 points, you get $100 off. And so if you only have 15,000 points, you can still purchase a flight that costs $250. You just only get a discount of $150 because that's what your points are worth. So Barclays lets you kind of grab that value and redeem your points in tiered thresholds and get the amount that it's worth.
The next program is Flex Perks, and that's from US Bank. So it's not quite the same as Barclays. You actually, how you book flights is you book flights through the Flex Perks portal. But to give you an idea of kind of what the points are worth, it's a little bit stronger of a currency. 20,000 Flex points is up to $400 ticket value. So this is kind of funky how this works. And like Eric mentioned before, where you could knock off the price of a flight with Barclays points, with Flex Perks, hypothetically, if you have 20,000 points, you can get up to a $400 ticket in value, but you cannot use those 20,000 points for a $450 flight.
Yeah, or a $400 flight in 1 cent.
Right. So the way to max out the value of the points is if you've got 20,000 points, you're going to try to find the flight under $400, but as close to $400 as possible.
Exactly.
But I mean, it's the way that the points are valued is consistent. So 20,000 points is up to 400, 40,000 is up to 800, and then 50,000 points is up to 1,000. So there's a little bit more creativity that goes into using those. You have to give it a little bit more thought than Barclays. And right now, there's really not a super great offer. It's 20,000 sign up after 3.5K spend in, I don't know, a few months. So
yeah, that's the FlexPerks signature card. Definitely wouldn't recommend it now. I don't even think we have a link for it, but if you really want it, you can find it on the website. But wait around. They'll probably dump a better offer. But yeah, just remember, I mean, like the only thing you want to keep in mind with these flex points is if you go $1 over that threshold, so if you have a $401 ticket, it's going to cost you an extra 10,000 points just for that extra dollar that the ticket costs.
Yeah, so
you got to find the right
keep
spot.
tabs on how many points you have, price out the flights and know your threshold.
And that's another great reason why you want to diversify. We say this all the time, but if you've got Barclays points and you've got FlexPerks points and you happen to be traveling twice this year, find the flight that's just under $400 and make sure you use the FlexPerks for that. And if there's the other flight is $407, then use the Barclays because you can use that and not lose out so much.
Yeah,
so
really
good benefit to having diversity. The next one is Capital One, which works very similar to the Barclays card in that you're able to just request a statement credit and get that cash back. There's no tiers like the FlexPerks. But the difference is that Capital One does not let you do partial redemptions. So if you want to buy a $500 plane ticket, you need 50,000 points. If you have 49,000 points, you don't get a penny back on your statement. You have to have the amount of money. So the strategy here is, one thing is it's really nice to just do small amounts of money. Mm-hmm. So all the little things that add up, the taxes and fees, maybe a night at a hotel, your Uber ride from the airport. There's lots of things that you can redeem these for. The other thing that you can do, and again, this requires having a couple of currencies potentially, but we had a scenario where we had somebody looking to book a round trip flight and the flight was too expensive with Capital One points. The round trip was going to be like $500 and he only had 45,000 points. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is we ended up combining a couple of one ways. And so that's a way that you can kind of do it. Keep in mind that in some cases, 2 one-ways is way more expensive than a round trip, and you don't want to take a bath on that. But there's a lot of places where one-ways are roughly half the price of round trip. So that's a way you can do it. You can break it up, and if you know you don't have enough Capital One points for the full round trip, you break that flight up, and you just do the one-way, redeem your Capital One points for that, and then either buy the ticket back or use Barclays or Wells Fargo or another currency for the other end of the trip, the return ticket.
That's a good point. Now, the final program is Wells Fargo. This is one of the newer programs, so that also means that there's not as much information as we have on the other programs, and there's some ambiguity with actually what a point is worth with Wells Fargo.
Yeah, I don't know if it's even that it's new or just that their website sucks. I try to look at it, and I have to log in to be able to see how the process works.
I guess their offer is relatively new with the Propel World Amex card.
Yeah, okay. So
and I don't even think they have a name for their program. If the domain is myrewardswellsfargo.com or something like that.
Yeah, I think it's just My Wells Fargo Rewards.
Getting into this, Wells Fargo is kind of tricky a little bit. And one thing, too, just from reading the other travel hacking and award travel blogs, there's some people that aren't too happy with the way that they've conducted their rewards program. Some people have noted that they changed the minimum spend. And in the middle of a bonus challenge, people didn't get the bonuses because they changed the minimum spend on the card offer like a month and a half in. So definitely do your diligence on this one. But to give you an idea of earning points and using points, right now they've got the Propel World Amex card, and that gives you 40,000 points after 3.5K spend, and I think it's 4 months actually. Double check that, but I'm pretty confident I just saw 4 months. There's also some actually really good benefits to this card. You get $100 per year in incidental travel charges like lounge access or getting booze on flights or buying meals on flights or checked luggage and all that stuff. The thing to keep in mind is there is an annual fee that is waived the first year. So that's a freebie year you get. It's the annual fee after that is $175. So really not the best long-term play, but if you want to do some short-term stuff, it can be a good play.
Yeah, I mean, it's on par with a lot of other cards if you use the full $100 credit towards airlines.
Sure.
So it's down to a $75 fee if you're going to use that, but it's another thing to keep track of.
Yeah. As far as using these Wells Fargo points, there's kind of some conflicting information. One thing we do know, it's published on their website, is that is 1 cent per point, and it starts at 2,500 points. So that would be $25 cash back or $25 towards the flight. And there's actually been talk on Flyer Talk that when you're redeeming 25,000 points or more, you get up to 1.75 cents per point, which is a pretty huge jump. And that would be 25,000 points would be worth $437.50. So like I said, definitely do your diligence on that one. Not the strongest program, but something to keep in mind because undoubtedly you do get cash back that you can use for travel, and that $100 incidental thing for lounge access and checked bags and in-flight meals and entertainment, that's pretty cool.
Very cool, man. All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, send those along to me or AJ at support@abroaders.com. And
if you're interested in the apprenticeship,
yes,
go to abroaders.com/apprenticeship. Make sure you spell it correctly because we don't have any dummy misspelled domains there. It's just one page on one URL.
This week's international jam is by an English group called The Heavy. They bring a little bit of funk, a little bit of soul, a little bit of rock and roll. Definitely was digging on this one. The track is called Short Change Hero. I hope you guys enjoy it. We'll be back next week, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. Wherever you are, travel safe.
I can't see where you coming from, but I know just what you running from. And what matters ain't the who's matters, but the ones who stop you falling from your letter.
Hey brothers, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.
This ain't no place for no